Welcome to the voice of Bold Business Radio, the show about ways to stay competitive in a changing market, break through business plateaus, and respond to the changing expectations of today's customers. Your host, Jess Dewell, is a rapid growth entrepreneur, consultant, and business advocate with a 20-year track record of business excellence. She candidly discusses how to achieve your growth strategy and realize your company's unfulfilled potential. Now, here's Jess.
Welcome to the voice of Bold Business Radio. And you know what? Before I even tell you anything about the show, I just want to say thank you to all of the subscribers out there. We have been working very diligently on upping what we have in terms of subscribers on YouTube, because there are 2,000 of you out there, yet we just crossed the 100 mark on YouTube. So I'm excited about the 2,000. I'm excited about the 100. We now have a direct YouTube channel link, which is fantastic. So 2,000 listeners, this is a call. Engage with us. Come talk with us. Tell us what you think. Join this conversation, because you know it, you're going to hear it at least one more time during this show, that it's up to us to have the conversation to define what effective leadership and leading looks like today. You're in the right place for conversations about needs that we as business leaders face regarding technology, customer expectations, and quickly changing markets. This program is about what it means to reach short-term goals and increase confidence in our long-term positioning. Program 184 is today's show, and it's called Who is in Charge of Your Growth Strategy? With a great big question mark at the end. Changing our state matters to changing our surroundings. As leaders in our business, in our role, we have stewardship, which comes with a specific responsibility. I'm Jess Dewell, founder and CEO of Red Direction, and I bring over 20 years of experience advertising, consulting, and facilitating specifically around growth strategy. Companies working closely with me and the Red Direction team learn to ask the right questions and think effectively on their feet. I'm your business advocate, specializing in working with companies at critical points in development to balance growth with the constraints found in both leadership and operations. All right. So the title of the show is actually the first question that we're going to talk about, and that is, who's in charge of your growth strategy? And while you're thinking about that, I've been trying to figure out a couple of stories, because I have so many stories, business related, life related, random experience related, okay? And they all apply here, and I'm going to pull from each of those areas throughout the program today, because when we're thinking about growth strategy, it's about dimensionality. And when we have dimensionality, all that means is we have more than one perspective. We can bring ourselves and look at something through one lens, wearing one hat, take off that hat, switch to another hat, and look at the same set of data with a different hat, a different set of experience, a different perspective, and then be able to work within ourselves, the realm of how we as individuals think. Because when we are able to do that internally, have more than one dimension in the way that we think, dimensionality, we are able to then model. Number one, we're automatically modeling it to others. Number two, we can begin to look for it in the teams and ask specific questions, because it's all about the questions of our teams, our vendors, people that we are gathering data from, how we look at data collected from our internal resources, as well as our external market research and from other resources that we use to be able to make the best decisions for the moment, for the period of time that we're working with. Awesome possum. So who is in charge of your growth strategy? And if you just said you or somebody else's name instead of the word everyone, this is the right program for you today. Because of course, the buck stops with whoever's in charge, and we're all in charge of something. So the buck stops with each one of us. And when we think about that, we have to really think of, we know what is right with our business. What is it that we really know about our business? And you know, I'm going to just jump in with the vision, mission, and values here. And the reason is because we have a whole bunch happening in our life, and we're pulled in so many different directions so much of the time that it's really hard sometimes to remember what is included in a decision. And we want to go with what somebody else is doing. We want to go with what our customers, our biggest customers, said that they wanted. We want to go with what we think is the coolest internally within our organization. All of them are right. So to choose what's right for your business, it comes back to your mission. What are you doing in your business? The product that you're offering is doing something. It is providing a value to somebody. And understanding what that is helps filter out all the right decisions for the best right decision for right now. And then our values. That's how we work together. And when we're thinking about what's important to us and how we work together, the behaviors that we take, the way that we show up and do different things is incredibly important, because what we don't say is equally as valid as what we do say. And when they contrast or they contradict or they're out of alignment even a little bit, there are going to be problems that pop up, and it's harder to find how do we grow and what are the problems that we're facing growing versus our interpersonal problems, because if somebody doesn't care, there's going to be an element of everybody that doesn't care. So everyone is in charge of growth strategy, and everyone is in charge of understanding how their role impacts the bottom line and what information can be collected within the work that's being done, within the people being talked to, within each of the roles. And so if you're not in customer service and you're not in sales and you're listening to this, there is still a responsibility and an ability for you to be having interesting conversations using the true north of the company to be gathering data and sharing that through conversation, bringing it back to the mission and values, bringing it back to, I have this neat idea. And this neat idea lined up with, in the direction of the mission, and using the values means that there's a very clear beginning idea, which also means that it can be fleshed out to have a beginning, a middle, and an end to actually present a solution instead of an idea. And solutions can then be evaluated based off of other criteria that may or may not directly touch your role, but definitely at that strategic level that's being communicated down to you and the impact that you have in your role. That's what we're talking about. So, what do we really know about our business? There are three things that we really know about our business. We know our mission, we know our vision, and we know our values. Okay. So if we have nothing else, now, whether they're fully in practice, whether they're fully embodied, whether you fully understand what they mean in the context of the work that you're doing, all those things are always variables, right? That's interpersonal communications. That's the relationships that are occurring, the unwritten expectations, the elephants in the room, all that stuff has to come together. So setting that aside and saying, we understand that's there, but we have a vision and a mission and a values, right? So when we have that, what do we go back to? We go back to the fact that everything that we do lines up with that mission, the reason we're here in the first place, the problem that we are solving. And so when we can come back to that, we already have a stake in the sand. We already are like, great, it's like a map with that big "you are here" button that's on it that you see in different places. It's the "you are here," your vision, mission, and values. So how we go forward with that is that there are three questions that we can use in our business to take that "you are here" sign and actually give it context. And so before we do that, I have a couple of questions that are going to be worked in as we go along. So use hashtag VBB Radio. We are live streaming on Facebook and YouTube right now. This will be distributed across our network of internet distribution services, including iHeartRadio and iTunes, as well as many others at the end of this program today. So Frank, thank you for using hashtag VBB Radio. And here is Frank's question. If everyone in a company is in charge of a business's growth strategy, are there different levels of how we as leaders should include people in that strategy? I like your question, Frank. The answer is yes, because the three questions that I'm going to talk about here in just a minute are directly related to them. So if somebody is in a role, right? So let's say we're going to just use somebody that we know is not on the front line. Let's say there's somebody, an entry-level person in the financial side of things who is responsible for processing payments coming in, right? So we've got invoices out, payments in, right? That whole role. People are in those positions. Well, they're not directly related to the customer facing side on the surface, yet they are. They know who's paying their bills. They know when those bills are being paid. They know who's getting billed. They have an idea of when that bill goes out, when to expect the payment coming back, right? So realistically, even though it's not a sales oriented, market oriented, front facing, if you will, position, there is market data that can be collected. There is information about how people respond to receiving an invoice and getting an invoice and how that communication happens that will provide insights to the cash flow opportunity, right? Even though we've got all these invoices out, are they going to come in at the time that by the time that we expect, or what percentage of that will? And so everybody is in charge of growth strategy, because that person in that role can then say, I know there are 3 clients, and I'm totally making this up right now. There are 3 clients that I always know will pay us 10 to 15 days late. It would really help us to be able to have those payments made on time. And so now this person in charge of growth strategy is actually figuring out what would a process look like to take to their superior, to take to the person who's going to make that decision and say, yes, please try this out, or please consider this and come back with a different plan. Those are types of things, right, that are great for developing people. But in this idea, we've got 15 days late. There are 3 clients. It's not an infinite number. It's a very small project that we can impact our cash flow. And when we impact our cash flow, we're setting a different expectation with our customers that we would like to be paid on time. Now we have a different conversation to be had. Our company to their company. It has a different conversation, a different level of connection, and being able to have an idea of how do we approach those 3 businesses? What would that look like? What is the dialogue going to tend to look like? Who do we need to talk to over there? When do we need to bring somebody else in? Do we need to start with somebody else instead of whoever's running the payments, and work through all of those scenarios? Because now when the expectation is that people pay on time, that's actually something that can be communicated out to sales. Hey, by the way, if they have this, now we have character traits. Here are some traits that these companies that are paying us 15 days late have in common. Hey, salespeople, when you're talking to people and they have some of these characteristics, please work into the conversation the importance of paying your bill on time, right? And so this is just one process that becomes a cross-functional way to set an expectation so that communication is open. Because sometimes getting paid and having to go to collections and all this other stuff, or waiting, it just comes from our own aversion to wanting to ask for or understand what money is all about in relation, or our own hangups around money. Your hangups, my hangups, the team's hangups, the company's hangups, the other company's hangups. And so if we can get through some of that, it sets a standard of where else are there potentially triggered conversations that are impacting our communication, that are impacting the opportunity to set up working as much as possible and as deeply as possible, serving each of our clients that we have. Thank you for that question, Frank. Here's another question. Oh, wait, but we're going to come back to the second question later, because I have to tell you the 3 questions. And I've got to make a note, so give me just a second to pause here. Okay, the 3 questions are this, right? Remember, we've got the "you are here" sign. And we know that from our vision and mission and values. And we're weaving that into the actions that we take. And by the way, part of having growth strategy as responsibility is understanding that some people around us may not interpret, use, or take on the vision, mission, values in their role. And when that happens, that's okay, because all we can control is us. So the you are here, vision, mission, values. This is how you can easily recognize these 3 questions. Can easily recognize you know exactly what you have right now to be able to come up with ideas, to be able to come up with a better way to do the role that you have, to be more efficient. The first question, have you shared your growth goals to every person in your organization? Okay, this is for the people making the strategic plan that Frank was asking about, right? Have you stated your growth goals to every person in the organization? And then take it one step further. So our company is going to grow 12% this year. That means here's where the different departments are tasked with finding growth. 3% here, 5% there, 7% there, whatever the case may be. How much is going to be organic growth? We're just going to grow because we are doing what we're doing so well. And once that is stated, and once everybody in the organization now has at least heard the growth goals for the quarter, for the year, the next part of this first question is, are they written down? How are they used in a living document that everybody in every role can access? The second question, can you rattle off where you are at right now with your responsibility and your team's responsibility in achieving that growth goal? Aha! Now, isn't that interesting? Because, of course, things do not go smoothly. They may be fun. They don't always go smoothly, even when it's fun, even when it's fast-paced. And so being able to know, not quarterly, not monthly, not weekly, in a day-to-day basis, having some sort of a sense, a feel, a report that can be looked at, a dialogue that's going to occur to make sure where those hiccups are identified early, to make sure that that conversation, those growth goals that have been stated and written down are in the top of the minds of everybody that we're working with. Because when you write them down, when you communicate them with everybody within your organization, they get to then communicate that with each other and back to us. And that's an important piece of accountability in addition to responsibility. When we're all responsible for growth in some way. To be accountable for it means, yes, I am going to hear it, I am going to accept it, I am going to internalize it, and I am going to use that information in the output of what we're working with. Third question, do you know what your competitors are doing? Really, do you know what your competitors are doing? Or do you only see their ads? Right? Do you only see this? Do you only see that? So we have 2 internally focused questions and 1 externally focused question. And the reason that we must know where our competitor, what they're doing, is because customers have changing expectations and everybody's trying to figure out how to grow. We're trying to figure out how to grow. Our competitors are trying to figure out how to grow. Our customers are trying to figure out how to grow. So if everybody's trying to grow, but we're forgetting to look around and see what are the actions that somebody's taking in an outward fashion to show growth, to attract growth, to develop growth, whatever that looks like. That's going to be some external insight that can add dimension. Remember at the beginning, I was talking about dimensionality internally. So our internal you are here can use these same questions. When I must make a decision incredibly fast, when there is a fire and something crazy has happened, when we have something unexpected show up somewhere that puts a big wrinkle in things, when everybody knows their growth goals, when everybody knows exactly where they are within achieving those growth goals, and understanding a little bit of outward perspective, what our competitors are doing, we can come back and instead of being sucked around, and it makes me think of one of those tornado things, right? Where there's 2 of the 2-liter bottles of soda with the dealie in the center that hooks them together, and you put water on one side and you turn it upside down and you shake it a little or twist it a little, and then the tornado develops and it slowly goes to the other side. So you have a tornado thing happening. Well, when we're in the middle of that tornado, all we can do is know what we know. These 3 things, we can always know what we know and be able to make a step forward no matter how crazy. Have you stated your growth goals to every person in the organization, and are they written down? Can you rattle off where you and your team are in achieving that growth goal? Do you know what your competitors are doing? Okay. Super exciting. I know I get excited. You're probably thinking, what is going on? Well, if you're not and you're as excited as me, welcome to this party. If you're still like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this whole concept of, who's in charge of your growth strategy, well, keep listening because we have another question. Hashtag VBB Radio. This is a question from Maya. Maya sent us an email. So please make sure you can also send in the emails, radio@reddirection.com, and we will receive those and work those into our conversations as well. All right. Maya's asking, I have a feeling that the way we talk today about business growth is linked to company culture. What should we work on first for optimal results? Culture or growth? What's interesting is everybody's always looking for a first step. What's that first step? Can I tell you there's a pre-step? There's that getting ready for the first step. And I would say it depends on the status of your organization, first of all. Culture or growth, depending on the age of your company, depending on the income of your company, right? The gross revenues every year, depending on the number of employees you have, depending on how many bad habits that are around there that are sabotaging growth in general and culture, because culture sabotages growth and a lack of growth can sabotage culture. So they really can be this weird codependent mess. And so I'd say culture and growth starts with responsibility and accountability and values, right? We could even leave the values out of it. Let's go with mission. Because when we have our mission, we know the job we're doing. We know what we're doing. Why we come to work every day is to contribute to delivering some sort of a product that somebody else wants and can benefit from in their business and in their lives. Okay, so when we start with that mission, now we can prioritize what comes next. And to prioritize what comes next could be culture related. Man, we have a lot of turnover here or there. Man, we're losing accounts left and right. Man, have you heard about this new company that we're all focused on, yet they're not the ones that are getting our clients that are leaving. Who's getting our clients that are leaving, right? So they're very intertwined. And really an inconsistent in either being focused on growth, being focused on culture will directly impact the other. And so there is no easy answer to that, Maya. So start with the mission. When you have to choose an either or, it's probably even potentially a third thing. But instead of having a teeter-totter, right? We've got the business or the business growth or the company culture. Why not try, instead of making a single line, why not try making a triangle? What changes about culture and growth when you throw into the mix the whole thing we're here to do at our company? Create casters, make frames, create IT programs for enterprises, go in and fix somebody else's system, bring business advice and strategic development advice, help the individuals in an organization through coaching mechanisms, consult around how do all those people with coaches work together. P.S. That's what Red Direction does. All these wonderful people working on themselves also still have to figure out how to work together and move in the same direction for the vision and the mission and the values to achieve those growth goals, to have a healthy culture, all of that wonderful mix. That's what we do here at Red Direction. That's actually the purpose of doing the Voice of Bold Business Radio too, Maya, because when we have programs, whatever program we're having, it's all about culture. It's all about vision, mission, values, and how we work together. But it's also about how do we grow? And how does what we're doing in our culture affect our growth? And how does our growth affect our culture? And I'll tell you a story. Okay, I'm going to just stop here and tell a story right after we break. So you are listening to program 184, Who's in Charge of Your Growth Strategy? We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. In every program, we share stories, tips, and concepts that benefit short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. Stay current and receive programs to continue sparking ideas about growth strategy by subscribing to the program at voiceofboldbusiness.com. Now, back to Jess.
Okay, welcome back This is hashtag VBB Radio to join in the conversation and have this conversation go past our live stream today. Go past what we're talking about right here on the show with the questions coming in, with the answers and the information that I'm sharing to add your voice to this story. So let's keep this conversation going. And we were talking about mission, and I was going to tell you a story. So here is an interesting story, and it may add some insight to this, okay? Once upon a time, Jessica was, 20 years old. And when Jessica was 20 years old, it was after she started with her first company that she was one of the owners of, and it was right around the time or right after our company was acquired. Okay, so early on in my career, and I knew that the only jobs that I had had before that were self-made. Figured out how to just hustle and do stuff for people to make some cash from my skills. I babysat, right? That was another one that fits into that model. I sold Girl Scout cookies, another one that fits into that model. And I worked my first job that actually had went on my taxes was when I went to college. And when I went to college, right, I worked in the cafeteria at the college that I went to. And then all of a sudden, right, we have this company, owner in this company. Now what do? We move. We left where we lived in the Midwest and we went out to the Seattle area. And then all of a sudden we had so much growth. It wasn't just the owners anymore. It was also now other people. So I have a staff of 10 and I'm like, okay, I got to bring people on. I don't even know how to hire. What's going on? We're going to just fill these roles with who we think is best. And we did all that. And so I had this hodgepodge group of people. We only had our mission, and we had how we worked together, which was we just did whatever needed to be done to stay afloat, because no matter what we did, we were growing so fast, we couldn't stay ahead. And so I was like, all I've ever done is independently work and work in a cafeteria. Now what do I do? Right? I have 2 years of experience working in an actual place for any consistent amount of time. And so I was thinking, I decided, well, I have so much I don't know, I'm going to know it. So I bought books and I read books and I found really great things. And then you know what I did? I included chapters from those books and made part of our staff meeting book clubs. And I didn't ask everybody else to read the book. I would either read to them, or I would come with an example, or I would come with a story. And I was self-help coaching me and my staff all at the same time. Well, that didn't make anybody happy. Nobody really wanted to be coached. They just wanted to do what they did, which was kind of okay, that's what we did. So inadvertent to us, the culture was, well, we just got to do what we got to do, and we're going to make it work. And we don't have to get along, and we don't have to be on the same page, and we don't have to be going in the same direction, because it's worked so far. So the actions that we took when we hired came through in the people. So the people that we brought on inadvertently valued those same things. So here we are trying to grow a cohesive team. We're trying to figure out how do we grow more, and everybody wants to go in their own direction. We're like a firecracker that has exploded instead of geese flying in a V, right? And I needed to get us to geese flying in a V, and I failed miserably at that. That self-help guidance didn't work. Now, was it good for me? Absolutely. Was I willing to try things and learn? Absolutely. But my team didn't want to learn like that, because we had inadvertently hired two values we didn't know we had that impacted the culture, which affected our growth. Because we knew we were growing fast, and we knew that if we could get our ducks in a row, we would grow faster. And we couldn't figure that out. And that was an ongoing thing for me for a while. So coming back to this mission, vision, and values and culture or business growth, it's how they play. So how are we going to show up? How are you, Maya, in your role going to show up? How am I, Jessica, in my role going to show up? What can I be not only responsible for, because that's in my job description, that's what I've agreed to do in the role that I'm in. That's what is my accountability? What questions do I ask to make sure I understand how my role affects that bottom line? What questions do I ask to figure out what is the behind the scenes priority outside of growth, so that I can make sure that I'm taking the actions I can take, and Maya, you're taking the actions that you can take to make the most of every action when time is such a precious commodity to get a result. Okay, I'm thinking about that. And really, so this concept of culture is also shared meaning. So if we take this horrible failure story of mine that I still laugh about, because do you know, I had poster boards, I had chalkboards, I had sticky note kingdoms, I had everything that you could imagine. I bought toys and tools and everything to help us engage. And it all fell flat. And of course, hindsight's 2020. Of course, that was the first time I was ever leading anything of any size, and recognizing that I needed to learn so much more. And I did. I learned it very fast. Now, did we ever have an amazing, strong company culture? I don't think so. I think we had stuff band-aided together. However, when I got accountable to myself and I said, okay, so they don't like this and I like this, and I can only change me and I can't change them. Okay, that's a pretty big revelation. So all I can do is set up their roles and their responsibilities in such a way that it's crystal clear that they're at least all moving sort of in the same direction instead of everywhere. And that, I believe, was the success and the takeaway from that. A few years later, that's what occurred. So we got better at hiring. We got better at recognizing how the way we worked shaped the actions everyone that showed up to work every day took. And that, I think, is the key piece of awareness in terms of accountability. How do we do what we do? So I think that we're going to go to one other question, and then we're going to shift gears a little bit to another section that I'd like to talk about here. And here's a question from Catherine. Oh, this is interesting because Catherine is on her own. She is a single individual business. Some of you call that solopreneur. Some of you call that micro entrepreneur. Some of you just call that business owner. Okay, whatever name you go with that, Catherine, thank you for sharing that you're in business by yourself for yourself. When you say everyone is in charge of my growth strategy, does that mean just me? Oh, okay, Catherine, you need to go to reddirection.com and sign up for the webinar that we are going to host on November 28th. And the reason for that is because we're going to be talking about customer expectation changes and how we can actually use other sources of data to create. I was talking about internal dimensionality, and then we went to this, we know what we know, which is our growth goals, where we're at in those growth goals and what our competitors are doing. We can always fall back to those. Well, another piece of that puzzle for everybody's in charge of growth strategy could be your customers, could be your vendors. I mean, you have a cell phone provider, you have an internet provider, you have some sort of marketing budget, you have some sort of sales funnel, client acquisition process, you have some sort of onboarding process. And by the way, so all of those people are contingent on your growth. If they don't do a good job, or they're only willing to do this for you, or they're only willing to fit in some other thing, what do you end up doing, Catherine? You end up piecing together this great big puzzle, which, by the way, is just the same as a company with 50 people, as a company with 500 people, and a company with more than that. All these pieces are coming together, and they're fitting together in a very particular way to create this masterpiece of a puzzle. And, sometimes the puzzle pieces don't fit well, and sometimes they fit too well. And it makes me think of the book, The Missing Piece. Anyway, so it is you, because you're responsible for saying, this is what I want my growth to be. This is what I believe my growth can be. Based off of historical data of past years, I know what my growth can be if I do nothing. So what if I did something different? Now, to do something different, your vendors must be evaluated. And maybe you have a conversation with them and tell them, hey, I'm trying to grow like this. How can you help me with the service that you provide? Now you're asking for partnership. You're asking for input, and you're asking your vendors to be accountable to you, just like you are being accountable to you. You're asking them to join in the responsibility of, one, knowing what you're trying to do, and two, thinking about you to stay in touch and being able to offer and support whatever they can do to help you leverage what they've got, so that you, when you take off doing whatever work you're doing as an individual and you put on that hat of strategic planning and growth strategy, so that when you put the hat on to do what you do, you've got the right path in mind, you know that you can talk to everybody you're talking about. And why not ask your customers? Customers, hey customer, it's so great to be working with you. By the way, give me some feedback on what we've been doing so far. I want to grow, and here's where I'm at, and I know you can be a part of my growth, because the more you invest in me, the more I get to invest in you also. So there's a reciprocity, and that dialogue exchange was one potential example of how do you talk to your customers about what you're trying to do to grow. I mean, because there's doing a job, and then there's also that strategic partnership. This is a symbiotic relationship. I, Catherine, am giving you something, company. You, company, is receiving something from me, Catherine. So how do we maximize that? What can we do differently? And ask a bunch of questions. So very interesting. So it starts with you and it ends with you, but it can include other people also. It also may mean that you evaluate what you're doing differently. Maybe a customer, maybe a product that you're doing, a vendor that you're using says they can do 25 things, but you're only doing 5 of those things because of whatever reasons that is. But there's a because, and there's reasons, and there's 20 things that aren't being utilized. Could you utilize them? And if so, do it. If not, what would it look like if you went and found a company that just did those 5 things instead of all 25 things? Would there be scalability within those 5 things? So this is where strategy comes in. And this is where letting people who you choose to support your business makes a difference by having conversations like this as well. So stick to that true north. I know what I know, and I know what I know even when I'm evaluating and not understanding. And my business knows what it knows, right? I think if you think about that, I know what I know when I have to make a decision on the fly, but my business also knows what it knows. It has a vision, mission, and values. And so with that, you are here sign, vision, mission, values of your company. How is the work you're doing reflecting that? Are there gaps? And go through the same process. My company knows what it knows, and I know what I know, but there's a gap there. So that's for everybody. Catherine, that would help you specifically when you're planning for growth, because when we're planning for growth, we can always say, get a number of new clients, do this, do that. But how do you maximize, and how do you not only find cost savings, but how do you find points to scale within what you're already doing? Okay. I'm loving this conversation so far. I'm gonna share another story, because when we are in crisis, we revolve back and go backward to what worked last time. So whatever our role is, and I'm talking as a leader, a strategic plan holder, an accountability maker, in addition to myself, everybody else. So I'm going to go back to that time. I think I was in my mid-20s by the time this one happened, right? So still part of that. What happened was our biggest client was acquired, which is great, right? We always want that. We all want that. Was acquired. And you know what's funny? The biggest client on our system had a free product. So we were taking credit card orders, receiving cash, receiving checks for a product that was completely free. Okay. So talk about a product that did what it needed to do, was very intuitive, easy to use, right? And this was back in the early 2000s. So we're talking like 2002, 2003. And they were making gobs of money. I mean, the biggest client on this one system was this company. And I have to tell you, it amazed me. So they got acquired. Okay. So we were like, oh, cool. This is so great. And we celebrated and we did all this stuff. A year goes by, and all of a sudden it gets wrapped up in, and not only was it a free product that got acquired, we were now told, you can't take any more sales for this. So we lost our biggest client with the notification of an email and a phone call. Mm-hmm. Now, that was insane, because what ended up happening is we couldn't just stop selling the product for them, and they couldn't just take their stuff down, take everything down off of their websites and where to do within the product. They did all that. And then they also said, Now the credit cards can't happen anymore. We're good, except you're going to keep getting cash and checks. All those cash and all those checks must be returned. And so we had no closing down. It was the faucet was shut off. And this is something that we have to think about in business. And in fact, more like the growth story that I was sharing about floundering all the time, a lot of us are like, man, I wish that could be us. Well, every single one of us has a real worry about losing our largest clients, and how spread out are we? And in fact, in the grand scheme of things, it was a hit. It took us several months to make that up. It didn't take us down because we understood the risk of where our largest clients were, who they were, and had a good diverse mix of a group of clients, that probably 20 of them, that made up that losing one of them would not really impact the business in any long-term capacity. There would be a short-term issue, but there would not be a long-term issue. And so for those of you watching, my Falcor decided he wanted to fly, and I'm putting him back on his little stool. So what do? Falcor's a luck dragon, right? From the Never-Ending Story. Well, it didn't even occur to us to be worried. Everybody outside of us, everybody at headquarters was worried, but the team that was working on it, we just kept doing what we were doing. And it was all good in the grand scheme of things. We didn't feel like we had to scramble to replace that. We didn't feel like we had to scramble, that we were worried that it was going to be a long-term problem. One, I don't think we knew better. Honestly, sometimes what we don't know is a saving grace. But two, it was, that happened. And if all we do is focus on that, we're missing out on what's next. And so this is a mindset that filters in and ties culture to business growth. So when we knew our growth goals, we were like, all right, sure, we are not going to make our growth goals this month. We are not even going to get what we were projected and told that was given to us, our growth revenue expectations. Okay, cool. So now what? We just plug along, and some of us doubled down. Some of us reached out to other clients. Some of us went out and said, where else could we change up some levers within what we're doing to see if we could make that up quicker? And sure enough, not a problem. Now, sometimes though, we have one client that outdoes everything else. And when that one goes away, we end up struggling, and we go backwards. We go backwards to this place of, now what? What worked last time? Total freak out mode, total lizard brain response mode. And when that happens, there's a lot. Not only was there a lot at risk by having one gigantic client that monopolized everything, there was also risk in the fact that internally, when there are no conversations being happening around, we only have one client, how do we reduce this risk? What happens if they go away tomorrow? What happens if they terminate their relationship with us? How do we plan for that? Well, let's go back to those 3 questions. Does everybody know your growth goals, and are they written down? Can you rattle off where you are right now? Do you know what your competitors are doing? Because here's the thing, depending on the reason that person left, sometimes it's competitors. Sometimes, it was just a business decision. Sometimes it's an act of God. Sometimes you never know. There's so many variations here. So we've got that happening. And those 3 questions can really ground us and go, okay, I don't have to go back to what my lizard brain says. I don't have to go back to the response that I had when I last encountered something that made me feel like this. I have my growth goals, and they're written down, which means there's more than that, right? How does it fit into other parts of your business? How do you gauge responses to test the waters a little bit to understand the way that the communication is happening around those growth goals? Then your personal knowledge and accountability. I know where I stand. I know where my team that I'm on stands. I know where the company stands because I listen. And even though my role might not be in the front lines, I still listen. And the third one, what are your competitors doing? Because everybody's looking for how to grow. Remember that? Everybody's looking for how to grow. So let's watch. Let's turn on our observer. And we have a lot of those happening in this particular case. So I'm going to switch gears because we have another question. This is from Mike Online, #VBB Radio. What are best practices in sharing growth strategies and results with everyone when they're also sensitive or confidential? Thanks, Mike. And the reason I'm really super excited about this, well, most of the time I'm super excited. You already know that. This has a special place in my heart because yes, there are decisions that cannot be shared with everybody in the organization. There are things that require confidentiality, and the less people that know about it, the better, to move through a situation with the least amount of hiccups or necessary requirements for some sort of a deal or relationship that is required at any point in time. Okay. So the thing is, when we say we're going to grow 10% this year or 12% this year, or we're going to say, we're going to invest in new product development, so we're going to rely on our organic growth to make it through this year, those are things that no matter what else is going on can be shared out loud. And so I love transparency. I think being transparent is really important. When, as a whole, are we losing money? Because if I'm in a role and I'm a customer service rep, and I am a customer service rep for a particular set of products, right? A particular set of clients, if you will, and I know that those clients' sales are declining, my role could change. I can say, I'm accountable for this. I get that the companies that I serve in this customer service role are having some problems overall. So what can I do? And I can evaluate what's going on. I can evaluate the types of calls. I can then document a few things. I can then turn around and go give them to the account managers or the salespeople or whomever the right person is, with my boss included, whoever I'm reporting to included, and saying, here's some common things that are going on. So now I'm accountable for my role. I'm doing the best I can. I'm also observing. And maybe it's not what competitors are doing. In this customer service roles case, it's, well, what are the customers doing? What are they saying? How do we work with that? And so we have a lot of information in that capacity as well that we can work with. All right, I've got a few shout outs here. Rebecca Davidson, woohoo! David Leopold, woohoo! And Pam Barraway, our Pam, woohoo! I have to tell you, I am glad you're all stopping by. I'm glad you're saying something. I'm glad you're joining in this conversation today. And by the way, even the questions that we took from Mike, from Catherine, from Maya, from Frank, we've got this fantastic conversation going. Now, I've shared some stories, I've shared 3 things, and I've even morphed those 3 things into a couple of different scenarios. So take these 3 questions. Have you stated your growth goals to every person in the organization? And are they written down? Can you rattle off where you and your team are at in achieving your growth goal right now? So if I said, how's it going? How well are you achieving your growth right now? Think about, what would you tell me? It's a hard question that I do ask, by the way. And the third piece, do you know what your competitors are doing? And in the case of the answer for what we were talking about with Mike, and actually in the transparency question, what can I do? And we're going to turn it around. Well, maybe I don't look at what the competitors are doing. Maybe I talk to customers. Maybe I don't look at what competitors are doing. Maybe I look at when we get paid. I'm going to go back to transparency for one more second. And I want to say, when we behave a certain way all the time, when our actions and our words match, we can say, and we can actually then hear, by the way, not only can we say with confidence, there's some things, here's what's happening that I can tell you. There are and I know you're going to have questions, and I may not be able to answer all those questions due to the need for confidentiality right now. And you might even say, and I don't even know, this is just what I was told, and we're going to do it because this is what's been given to us. And that's what we do. We do the best with what we have, and we move forward, and let's figure it out. When your actions, when your attitude line up to words like that, we are able to support, we are able to get together, we are able to make differences, even when we don't have all the pieces. Because, by the way, people who can't tell you everything don't know everything either. I've been there. And in fact, most days, I have no idea all about the total picture. I only have some percentage of the picture. And I use those 3 questions. Growth goals stated to and I guess I'm going to call them statements now. The growth goals stated to everybody and written down. Understanding exactly where you are achieving those growth goals when you're asked, like right now. And do you know what your competitors or the vendors and customers and interactions with others around you, what are they doing that are impacting our growth and external growth? When we can use that, come back to the you are here, we now have a basis to move forward, knowing we're never going to know everything, knowing that maybe we can't know everything. So, wrapping up, this is program 184, and you can find the program notes for Who's in Charge of Your Growth Strategy at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P184. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 184. You can also search for the word strategy or growth strategy, and the whole topic, Who's in Charge of Your Growth Strategy, will show up. I've been telling you all along, keep this conversation going. We've had a good one right here, right now, today. So what are you going to do about it? Will you reach out to me and share a situation? Will you reach out and share on social media exactly about your growth goals? Yes, we have our growth goals written down. Yes, everybody knows about them. That would be great. Use hashtag VBB Radio. Let's make this business growth goals program something to talk about, something top of mind. Because as we're going into festivals and holidays and dark nights and the sun rising a little bit later, our ability to do things and our desire to do things and our excitement around things may change. The 3 questions that we've been talking about the whole way through provide a true north, a stake in the sand, the you are here sign to move forward with where you're at instead of having to scramble backwards or to make up time. Where you're at right now to move forward with confidence. All right, learn from my experience, learn from the questions that were shared today, learn from the conversations that will continue using hashtag VBB Radio, as well as conversations that come into us radio at reddirection.com, and share this program with somebody that you know that can benefit from this information right now. Consider, what is your role and who's in charge of your growth strategy?
The Voice of Bold Business Radio gives you insights about how to achieve your company's growth strategy. Use hashtag VBB Radio or email us at radio@reddirection.com to ask questions and share your experiences. Add your voice to the conversation. Together, we define what being an effective leader means today. Special thanks to the Scott Treatment for technical production. Thank you for joining us.